Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar Wednesday. I love doing these sessions because it's a time for us to come together, to talk, to share. And often at times, it's a great opportunity for me to kind of walk through some of my learnings. And I think that's one of the themes of today's webinar is about kind of that pain of change, changing our business, changing our perspective, changing the way we do things, and how important it is to do it. But it can be hard, and we have to find our way through it to figure out, is it worth it? Sometimes we have to ask ourselves those questions. And today, I want many of you to ask yourself, what are you willing to change? What are you willing to do differently? And how are you looking to even overcome something that might be a setback for you in your business? Anyone who's the first time joining our webinar, I am Stephanie Red Cross West, and I do these webinars because I love talking about marketing. I really love supporting vegan businesses. And it's really important to me that I do sessions like this free for everyone and anyone to join at any point in time. And I know some of you watch these as replays so that you have kind of a place to get inspiration, get ideas, get recommendations, and really have support as you're kind of walking through your business life. So, one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of give you some insight into the changes. What has been happening? What have I been navigating through? What are some of the things that have been happening in the last 24 months that I think would be very relevant to share with you? So, this is kind of what's been going on, what's been happening behind the scenes. Some of this you guys might have seen, some of this you might have heard about, some of this I've even maybe talked about in different webinars and different events. But I wanted to kind of bring it all together for a couple of different reasons. Because what I found over these last 24 months, the changes that I needed to make, that some of these changes were just naturally a result of, everything we all went through with the pandemic. Some of it had to do with us, many of us kind of finding our way because our businesses changed. Or we had a big lull in our business. Our businesses were not growing at the same rate. We didn't have the same sales. And literally, we almost had to reinvent our business. And in some ways, I had to do that as well. The other reason I want to bring this up is because of the pandemic, things happen. Like my number 3 here, navigating clients and offers. We lost some of our clients. And unfortunately, we didn't lose our clients for, reasons that we could have controlled. Some of it is some of our clients unfortunately didn't make it through the pandemic, or some of our clients decided that they didn't want to continue their businesses, or they wanted to restructure their businesses. So they put them on pause for a few years. We had a lot of clients who did events. And for some of those clients, they really haven't kickstarted their events or didn't start kickstarting their events again until almost now in 2023. So therefore, what was stability in my business, what was things that were working in my business, those things shifted. And it not just shifted for me, but became an extension of that because of our clients. And because of that, I had to reinvent. I had to start to say, well, what services am I going to offer? Do I change my services? Do I do things differently to navigate the shift in clients and also a need to make my business even more financially stable? So let's talk about number 3, financial security. And this is one thing I'm curious about for many of you out there. How many of you have felt that strain of financial security? And I don't just mean it from the sense of like all of us in small businesses are struggling at times. We're all kind of feeling like, oh, how is this all going to work? But what I mean is, do you feel like you're challenged in that area, but you don't necessarily have the solutions in place? And what I found, especially for myself, is that I knew I wanted my business to get financially strong again after the pandemic. But what I also wanted my business to be able to do is do things differently, have more transparency, be able to see the health of my business from a finance standpoint. And I know for many of us out there, if we have money in the bank account, then, we're good. We can cover expenses. It's a very sometimes black or white discussion. But what I want to challenge you on today, and I want to share with you today, is some of the things that I did differently to make my business strong, and also reinforce things for me. And one of the things I reinforced on the financial side, which really goes back up into this mindset piece, that's why I'm kind of working a little bit in reverse here, is I started writing myself checks. And what I mean by writing myself checks, I'm curious how many of you are paying yourself? How many of you are like literally writing yourself a check as if you are, paying yourself, like if you paid an assistant or if you paid someone else, to build your website? Like, how many of you are truly have a process in place around that? And you might want to put it in the comments. Some of you might want to be like, you know what? This is something I got to do, but I'm going to keep it to myself. I don't want to put in the comments. That's okay. You just nod your head or have an internal dialogue. I'm perfectly fine with that. Thanks, Marlene, for sharing. But what I find is for many of us, our stability and mindset, all of these things start to work together. And the reason I talk about writing checks, I've always written myself a check, like, from a payment standpoint, but I was never consistent. And what I mean by that is I didn't do it every single month, just like I get bills every single month. The other thing I didn't do from writing my check standpoint is I always paid myself last. So I waited to see how everything was and what was going on. And instead, now what I do is I write a check to myself first. Now, that feels scary, and it was scary when I made that change. But what I had to do differently, and the reason I bring this up is a very small, sometimes feels like a minute kind of thing, is I started to do that because I was working so hard. I was getting burnt out. I was struggling in my business. I was struggling with the value of what my business and everything was bringing to me. And what I realized is I didn't compensate myself just like I would if someone was working for me. I didn't treat myself the same as I would for my team or if someone else I hired. And what I found is I was, through my actions, devaluing myself. For my actions, I was saying I was last on the list. And whether you write your check first, write your check second, what I want you to do differently as you think about changes, as you think about ways to not only make you financially secure in your business and also in your life, is make sure you're at that top of that list, whether it's first, second, or third, that should be things that change. And those are things that helped me and helped me for my mindset shift because I needed a little bit more freedom. I needed a little bit more boundaries. My business was encroaching on everything, and I believed I would sacrifice. I would believe that I had to sacrifice everything to get it done. Now, I don't want to make it sound like I figured it all out and I don't sacrifice and I don't sit around and sometimes not put myself high enough on the list. I'm still working on that. But what I started to do as far as a shift in my business is I started to commit to it and put actions in place in my business that help me move the needle, as opposed to saying, I'm going to magically just fix it all. I started to change the way I manage my business, change the way I manage my calendar, change the way I say no and saying no so that I could have that shift. And then the final thing I had to do, and I know many of you may not have teams, but one big change for me is I expanded my team, which was a lot. When I started my business, I was just a solopreneur. Then for many years, I'd have maybe 4 or 5 people that would support me on different projects, an editor, someone would help me with a little bit of social media. I'd have someone help me with coding and all of those things. And what happened is when we started to say, okay, I want to be a bigger business. We want to take on more clients. We want to diversify our finances. I want to take some time off. All of that meant I needed support. So number 4 here on the list, I had to figure out how I was going to build a team, how was I going to delegate, and the shifts in my team, I had to emotionally deal with those changes. If you've ever had somebody you've worked with for years, I had someone I worked with for 8 years that left the team in this 12-month period, and it hit me like a brick. It was so hard because emotionally, it's kind of like we did so many things together. I wasn't even thinking about this person leaving the team. And the reality is, the person left the team because it was time. They wanted to do something different. They wanted to branch out. It's just change. It's just stuff that happens. But it hurt because it meant in some cases I had to go into this new path, this new journey for my business, all these shifts I want to do from a mindset standpoint, financial changes, client changes, offer changes. I had to do that without the people I had been working with for 8, 4, and 3 years. People I'd been working with for a significant amount of time. And therefore, I had new people who didn't know my business and didn't know things. And it's like, how am I going to take time off when I don't have people who knew the system? And all of those changes meant that I had to not only shift, but all of that happening meant I had scenarios and solutions constantly popping up. So, what I'm going to talk to you about today are the scenarios and solutions and everything were popping up. Now, with all of this going on, you may be like, oof, this is a lot. This is a ton. Or you may be like, I can relate. I have my own list of stuff and changes and things that I had to work through. And what happens is people say, like, is it worth it? Is it worth working through every single bullet point that I have on this list? Is it worth going through all of these changes and challenges and problems and headaches? And my answer is always yes. And the reason my answer is always yes, because of the people that we help, because of the changes that we can make, and the things that can happen in your business when you do it. So for me, my biggest change, my biggest, I would say, benefit or impact was number one, by me making these changes, I could help more people. And that's a big thing, at least for me. Because what I found is when I was stuck in my ways, I was stuck in the way I always did things, meaning I built my business on doing coaching. I built my business on doing one-on-one work. So therefore, the number of hours I had was really the numbers that were available for me to grow my business. So if I didn't change that dynamic, I couldn't grow. I couldn't take on more clients. I couldn't support more people. I couldn't be on live calls. I couldn't do events. Even things like these in webinars became harder and harder for me to do. And also, it meant that I was always staying up late at night and, it was just crazy. So by me making these changes, I could be with more of my clients. I could do more. I could make a bigger impact. So if that's what you're trying to do, I want you to embrace change a little bit. The other thing is I was able to offer more options. What I found is sometimes in your business, you have all these ideas, all these things like I want to do with this and I want to do with this and I want to offer this. I want to write a book. I want to do a conference. I want to have a community or a membership program. I want to speak. And you're just like, I want to, or I should, and I could. And I can help people by having all of this opportunity. But the challenge is sometimes we're limited because we don't have enough time. We don't have the right team in place because we haven't gotten our financials together and because our mindset's not ready for it. And what I found is when I unlocked those things, I could offer more solutions, more tools, more services, and more people to a more diverse group of clients, which also leaned back into that. And then the last thing is financially things changed. By me making these changes, we were able to increase our revenue. We were able to almost double what we had done, which to me was like, whoa, like that was more than I expected. I didn't really expect that kind of windfall from it. I thought things would be better. But some of this also, when I think about some of the additional revenue, some of this is around us just putting better processes in place, not repeating the work and doing things over and over. And all of those changes really made a difference. So let me rewind. Let's go back to the problems. Let's go back to when it was an issue. And when I had trouble in my business, when I realized there was so much going on, there was just too much I was trying to accomplish, my first thing I had to do is I had to admit it was more than I could stand. Now, the reason I bring this up is, I'm very like independent Black woman. I feel like I can do all types of things. I feel like I can take things on. And I have a fairly good track record of doing things, getting things done, accomplishing things. If I dream it, making it happen. But at a certain point, I hit my capacity. At a certain point, I got off the path. And at a certain point, I wasn't producing at the level that I wanted to produce at. And what I had to do is I had to admit it to myself that what I built was not working for me. And it wasn't working because somebody else did it. It wasn't working because I set it up. And that's a hard thing sometimes to admit to yourself, That's a big mindset shift sometimes for us, because at times we think of what everyone else is doing and how this person did this. And, even with the COVID stuff, COVID came and this happened, and all that stuff is true. I'm not trying to say that that didn't happen to me too. And I don't have external things that were driving me crazy. But I had to take a little bit of ownership of what was happening. And I had to be honest with myself and say that it was too much. Now, I wasn't the person that was like, oh, yeah, it's too much. I must do better. Like I was ready. I got slammed. I got burnt out. Do you know what I mean? I had to go to doctor's appointments because I wasn't sleeping. I was exhausted. I got a hernia. I had my wrist started hurting. I couldn't even type. You know what I mean? I got COVID. And then after I got COVID, everything just started happening. I would get sick, and I would get sick for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. I'd lose my voice for like a week. I had headaches during the day. And what was happening is my body was telling me it's too much. But remember, Stephanie was like, it's okay, I got it. I'm just going to keep persevering. And what was also happening is like everything in my business was tied to me. All of the success in my business was tied to what I could do. And when I say it's all tied to me, what was happening is if I was sick, if I didn't feel well, if I had to go take care of myself or go to a doctor's appointment, I almost felt like my health was competing with my business. Taking care of myself was competing with my business. And therefore, what ended up happening is it's not that I didn't want to take care of myself. It's just I couldn't figure out the tiebreaker. I couldn't figure out how to get it all done or try to make it happen. And I bring this up because I know for some of you out there, you might be feeling this too. You might be feeling that tension. And I wanted to share some of the things I did to help relieve it. Also, one of my biggest, I think, learning from this is that I really still even wasn't ready to change. Like, even though like my wrist got so bad for like 2 days, I couldn't type at all. And now a person who's on their computer for the amount of hours I'm on, not being able to type for 2 days is terrifying. Because at that point, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was wrong. I don't know why I woke up one morning and it just didn't work. Now, but I still was like, okay, my wrist doesn't work. So now I'm going to do some dictation and I'm going to make it happen. And I was like, I wasn't ready, right? So, and the other thing is, for some of you, you might be thinking like, yeah, I want to change. But here's the other thing that happens to most of us. It's like, well, if I change, I got to do more work to change. It's going to take more time to change. It's just like when you hire someone. I hear a lot of complaints when people hire people or bring on an assistant. They're like, if I just do it myself, it'd be faster. Because you feel like it takes more to teach someone else. It takes more to put a process in place. It takes more to improve. And it might take more, but remember my results. Eventually, the results do catch up and the impact does get there. So, what I want you to do is think about today some of the things that you might do. Yes, they may be a little bit more work. They may require you to do a little bit more in the beginning, but in the long term, they're ultimately going to help you. They're going to make sure that you don't have to sacrifice yourself for your business success. You don't have to feel that way when you're trying to move forward. Okay? All right. So let me give you some of the solutions. Let me talk about some of the things I've done. And I've talked about these things in other webinars. I've talked about them even sometimes in emails, but I want to do it in this setting for a couple of reasons. I want you to be able to ask me questions about it. And I think it's so much fun when we're doing sessions like this because I can explain why I did it this way and what I was thinking and all that stuff. And then I'm also curious what any of you are doing. Now, true Stephanie fashion, when there's a problem, I go to solve it. I'm a very solutions-driven person. If there's a problem, I can find a way. But what I found is the issues I was having with my health, the issues I was having with prioritization, the issues I had with trying to make things better was not just a fix I needed. What I really had to do was gradually fix, meaning gradually change. And I needed a way to monitor what was really happening to me. Now, I know that sounds maybe weird, and it sounds even weird as I say it. But when I say I needed a way to monitor what was going on, I'm showing an example of my Apple Watch there. This is a thing that pops up that's letting me know my stress level. What it's doing is it's It's capturing my heart rate and basically my beats and how fast my heart is changing as far as beats. This can happen when you do a Zoom call, when you do a meeting, when you're under stress and you have to do a deadline. All these things are happening. But what tends to happen in our bodies, like if you don't have like maybe, like a major anxiety or something like that, you may not feel it. You may not really know that you got stressed during that one Zoom call, but the other Zoom call didn't stress you. Or you did a live session. And what I like to know is, are live sessions stressful for me? Are calls stressful for me? Working with my team? Like, what is really stressful? And what I ended up doing is by putting this app on my watch, it pops up and tells me, hey, Steph, pay attention. Hey, Steph, you're overloaded. Hey, Steph, this is what's going on. And what's happening is it was helping me pay attention in the moment. It was telling me that there's a problem now. Where before, at the end of the night, I'd be like, yeah, I'm exhausted. That was a tough day. But by me having something that could monitor how I was feeling during the day and give me alert meant I could change things. I could reduce stress quickly. I could react to that stress and do something about it instead of like feeling stressed for the next 2 to 3 hours. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, do you have to use the Apple Watch? No. Do you have to use HRV like I'm using? No. You can find whatever tool works for you. But this really was a aha moment for me because some days that thing is buzzing and going off all day. And I was like, whoa, what's happening? What's my perspective? What is happening? Do I need to change? All right. The other thing I had to do is I had to find tools to help me when I was stressed, when I was upset, when things were happening and I was just struggling. So I found a whole bunch of apps. Now, I'm an app person. I love tools. I love phones. And not everyone is going to do the exact same thing. Whether you're a person that needs to take a walk, or you want to journal, or you want to do meditation, you have to find the thing that works for you. But what I found that worked for me is number one, I had a sleep problem. I was not sleeping at night. And a lot of times I was just stressed. I would be thinking about stuff before I went to work, before I went to sleep. I would be on Slack reviewing my day, looking at things. And then what happens is I would wake up, or I'd wake up in the morning thinking about something, or I'd wake up early, or I get up in the middle of the night because I go to the bathroom and come back. And then like for the next 15 minutes, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got to make sure I do this. And oh, I got to make sure I do that. And my brain was churning the wrong times. Now, I knew my sleep had to be better. That's why you saw in the other previous photo, I had to get a sleep study. I had to do all of that stuff to figure out what was going on. Was it physical? Was it emotional? What was actually happening? So I had to do that work. But what I also had to do is start tracking my sleep. So the app I use on the side is called Pillow. And that app, now I track my sleep every night. So I know what kind of quality sleep I'm getting. And if I have a bad night, if I'm not sleeping well, and then that morning before, I can say, what did I do differently? Did I stay up and, watch something on TV at night because, I shouldn't have? Was I on my phone right before I went to sleep? What was I watching or listening to or doing before I went to sleep? Did I wind down? Those are the types of things I started to do because what it did is instead of me trying to fix me, I started to create and give me tools that would alert me to when there was an issue before it got too big. I also use these other tools, breath work. I use that a lot when I have to do something that requires a lot of energy or something I get really excited about or I'm looking forward to, or for some reason, anything. If I have to do a presentation and I'm nervous, I'll do some breath work before the presentation. And now because I have it on my phone, I can just literally click right away and solve it. Wake Out is this tool where you can do these like workouts. They're kind of funny. They're little weird workouts, but they're workouts you can do at your desk. And the idea is that if you're feeling a little bit stiff or you just want to get some movement going, you can get a 3-minute workout. And they do this thing like face yoga. So you like move your face and your eyes around. They take water bottles. You can use those as weights. You do like these punching exercises. It's just stuff to get me moving. And when I sat down and put these solutions in place, it really helped me. And then the last solution I just want to mention here is my little Amazon Dot. Now, there's some love-hate relationship with my Amazon Dot because I do feel like it's probably listening to everything I got going on. So that's one issue. But if we put that to the side, the other thing I do with this thing is I work a lot. I work a ton. And I get caught up in my work because I enjoy it. So what'll happen is I'll be working and it could be 9 o'clock at night and I didn't eat. I didn't cook. I didn't get up. I didn't do all types of things. So now what I do at my Dot is that the time I'm supposed to stop working, music comes on. And so when the music comes on, it's a reminder to me that, hey, it's time to get up. It's time to stop. And that has helped me a ton because I lose track of time. I lose track of it. Now I put different songs on different days so that they support different moods and different feelings I have. So I really love it because it ends up being a fun thing. But this is some of the stuff I've started to do to truly help me move the needle. Now, what about for you guys? Anyone doing any of this stuff? Has anyone ever tried anything like this? What do you guys think? Are you kind of like, is this something I should consider? Or do you feel like you have something in place to help you monitor and make sure that you're prioritizing yourself, you're understanding what's happening, and you have a solution in place? Thanks, Don. All right. While those come in, while you guys respond to that, I'm going to talk about another thing I love to do. Another solution I've started to put in place. Good idea, Sam. Yeah, sometimes you got to leave that stressful environment when things are happening. Absolutely. Ooh, love it. Alarms on your phone. Absolutely. I love it. You walking your dog. That is beautiful, Dawn. So that's great. And that's the thing is the reason I'm showing you this. Let me go back one thing. I didn't put all of these in place right away. The reason I'm saying gradual fix is I did one thing, then I tried the next thing, and then I tried the next thing. So therefore, my fixes built on top of each other. My fix wasn't fixing me, it was providing me outlets, solutions, and things that worked for me in my heightened state. It didn't make it seem like I'm never going to be stressful again. I'm just going to live a stress free life. And I wish that was the case, but I don't always live a stress free life. So I needed a way to counter the world I live in. The other thing I want to mention in here is time off. I talk a lot about this lately. And I think it's a good time to bring this up. And I put this slide in here purposely because we're in October. So we're coming up during the holiday season. And one thing I want to recommend is starting to block your calendar. Now, how many of you block your calendar? Like take off for your birthday. How many people block your calendar and say, hey, the holidays are coming up. I'm going to block those dates. Okay. How many people are like, I'm going to try to take a 3-day weekend or vacation? Okay. So I'm seeing a couple of hands, but I think I see a couple heads shaking no too. So I see a little bit of both. So here's one thing I want to recommend. Here's one thing I've done to help me change, but change for the better. And the other reason I'm telling you these changes is I needed these changes so I got more time back so I could take care of myself. So I could make these changes. Like I literally needed the time back. And I know it may feel like you don't have enough time. And I felt that way too. But I learned to work more efficiently. And I'll talk about some of the things I even do to work more efficiently once I made these changes. All right. So, calendar. We are in October 2023. I am in the process right now of blocking off my entire calendar for 2024. And what do I mean by that? When I go into the calendar, I block off things. So this is January 2024, just so you can see. All right. So for New Year's, I'm taking off time. Number one reason, 31st is my anniversary. And actually this year is our 10th anniversary. So it's so exciting. And what I found is if I don't block these things off my calendar, because I have a live calendar, I'm a coach, so people can jump online and grab my calendar. Because, anyone may ask me, hey, are you available? Hey, do you want to meet up? Instead of keeping all this stuff in my head, what day am I on vacation? What day am I going away? What day am I doing what? I put this stuff in my calendar. Now, vacation has been a weird thing for me. It's only been the last couple of years that I've actually had vacations. So I don't want to make it sound like I've been this vacation girl. But what I learned is before I wanted to take vacation, I had to say when I wanted to take vacation. Then if I wanted to take time off, I had to tell my clients. So if you want to take time off for something, start talking about it. You have to let people know in advance. You have to say, hey, I always take off this time. Hey, and for me, this is my anniversary because when I first got married, I did not take the time off. And after I got married, at night, at midnight, 1 o'clock, I was on my computer working on a campaign I did for a client that was a New Year's Eve campaign. So I've been on this end of the spectrum where, got married, worked, and now I'm at a place where I'm taking time off, right? Great point. Yes, time off at home. So let me give you that recommendation for this. Two things that Karen put a really good point about when you work from home, sometimes it blurs the lines between work and everything else. A couple of things that I do. When I block my calendar to help me with the blurred lines. And what I mean by that is I add not just my work things I want to do to my calendar, I add personal things to my calendar. So if I cook with my niece on Sunday, that stuff's in my calendar. I am now adding farmers markets that I want to go to. I found a couple of them. I don't know if they're going to be that good, but I'm still going anyway because it gets me out the house. I'm putting those things in my calendar. I'm putting events that are happening in my calendar so that my calendar isn't just about work. My calendar is telling myself I'm making space to live. The other thing that I like to do is I like to set boundaries on my time because when you work from home, it feels like you can work anytime. So when I talked about like my little dot that comes on, the idea is that when that dot comes on, it's personal time. It's time to stop. It's almost like an old school, like, bell that people would have. Like if you're in school, like the bell at the end of the day, or like old school working environments, where some people would have like, I shouldn't say old school, because depending on the work environment you're in, sometimes they'll have an alarm for like the end of the day so that people know. It's replicating that same thing. I find you have to replicate that when you work from home. The other thing is you have to shut down your computer. I mean, turn it off, shut it down. What I do is I walk away from my computer. If I want to do something at the end of the night, I can't sit in here and do it. I try not to work even on this computer with too many of my personal things. I try to use my phone for my personal things if I really can do that, because if I'm sitting in front of this desk, the lines are always blurred. The other thing is when I say I block my calendar, if there's a holiday, like MLK Day is coming up on a Monday, I used to just work through all these holidays. Sometimes I didn't even know they exist. I talk to a client and be like, yeah, let's meet on Monday. And then later on, I'd be like, oh gosh, it's an actual holiday. Like I'd almost be embarrassed, right? Now what I do is we go through, and anything that has these Monday holidays, I not only block off the Monday, but I block off the day after. I block it off my calendar so I never have meetings. The other thing is the way I set up my day, and we don't have time today to go through it, but the way I set up my week is I have what I kind of call my work, like my grind day. Monday's my grind day. I almost never do meetings. But when there was a holiday week, what used to happen to me is my grind day would be a holiday. So I wouldn't get a day to grind. And therefore, I would almost be frustrated by taking that holiday off because I didn't feel prepared for my week. Now what I do is I block that Tuesday so that Tuesday can be my new grind day. And therefore, because I have a holiday, I can truly take that holiday and then start with that grind. And because I book this way in advance, no one gets squished in the process. When someone looks at my calendar, they're like, well, you're not available on Tuesday. I'm booking Wednesday, or I'm booking Thursday. And what it started to do is create space for me, created space for me to take time off. And now it creates space for me to do potential 3-day weekends. I don't get to do a lot of vacationing. It's really only for my anniversary is the time I normally take off. And even with that, I have to have no meetings the week before so I can prep to take off, because I used to take off and then just work in the morning from the hotels. But I had to prep to do that. So I say this to say, make time to quit during the day. Make time to take the weekends off or take holidays off. And you have to make it real, and it has to pop up in your calendar. It has to show up. It has to actually exist. All right. The other thing is, I was worried about everything in my business. I was worried about the finances. I was worried about the clients. I was worried about all those things. Those are the things that were driving some of this change, driving some of these issues. So one thing I started to do is change my banking. Now, we were talking earlier, I was asking if everyone pays themselves or writes checks and things like that, and bank accounts. I wanted to recommend or show you a couple of different ways I do things. Really glad to see. I saw in the comments that having separate bank accounts is definitely the number one key thing. The other thing is I want to show you a structure that I use to help me manage my business and my finances better and give me visibility. What I didn't have before is I couldn't really plan for the future, because I just had I had 2 bank accounts, but they were basically just used almost for the same purpose. Money was just flowing in and money was just flowing out. But what I found is For me to build my business, for me to know how much money am I really making from a revenue and payment standpoint, had to be separated from how I pay my expenses. So when you look at this slide, you see the number one on the left-hand side. I have a bank account that's dedicated only to revenue and payments. That's where the money comes in. When someone pays an invoice, the money goes there. It's the only thing happening in that account. It's only money coming in. At the end of that month, I transfer that money, all of it out into other bank accounts. The reason being is it allows me in real time to see payments that are coming in, if payments are missed or something I'm expecting, because there's not multiple things happening at the same time, meaning transfers happening and payments happening and all that stuff in that account. It keeps it from being muddy. It keeps it very clean so I can say, okay, am I hitting my targets? Is the money flowing in like I expect? It also allows me to look at my bank account. And I actually get a text message every morning of the balance of my bank account. Now you can do this. Doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account. When I first started to do this, I got those text messages because I just wanted to make sure I had enough money in my bank account every day. But eventually it grew because then I could have like a balance in it. So set that up. If your bank allows you to get one, get a text message of your balances so you know what's going on and what's in your accounts. And then what I do is with count number one, at the end of that month, I transfer a certain amount of money into my operational savings. Operational savings is the money that I need to run my business. You know how people say like you need to have enough money to like pay for your bills for like 6 months or pay for your bills for 3 months or something like that, right? Oh, thanks, Leslie. Love the comment. You need to do the same thing for your business. And you need a bank account for that money to go into. Now, this money can be small. You may be putting $50 in there, $100 in there. I don't want you to think having the structure means you have to have a lot of money flowing through your business, because that's the only way I've done this. Even I do this on my personal side as well. When I pay myself, I also have an automatic withdrawal into like a personal savings account. And when I first started, it was only taking out $10 a month because that's all I could afford. But I wanted to train myself to save. And that's how it starts. So I don't want you to think like, wait until you make a gazillion dollars to do this. This is something you want as a habit. And what I ended up doing is now I bring a certain amount of money comes in here for operational savings. This is the budget I believe it takes to run my business each month. And that money just keeps going in there every single month. Then at the beginning of each month, I transfer from my operational savings into my operational budget. That is where I pay bills. Only bills get paid out of that account. This is also a way to kind of protect my accounts just in case there's fraud or there's issues. I don't have like one account that gets hacked or has something happen to it, and therefore I have money tied up until the bank figures it out. For 2 or 3 months, I have different bank accounts so that even if that happens or there's a compromise, it gives me that security as well. The operational budget is the money I need for that month. So the savings is in there. Let's say, for example, we got $200 in the savings, but my operational budget is only $100. So $100 will get transferred in there. Even though my savings will keep going up, each month $100 will go into my operational budget and it'll pay out whatever's available. And that way, every month I can look and see, is everything being paid in bank account number 4? And is everything coming in bank account number 1? The other thing I started to do is I started to create a business savings account, because I got to pay my taxes, and you pay your taxes quarterly, so it's a weird frequency than when you receive money or maybe even pay yourself. The other thing is I need to invest in my business. I have to update my website, and I don't do it all the time, but it's a big project when I have to do it. Or say I need new equipment, camera or computer or something like that, big expense. It's not a regular budgetary item. So what I do is I put aside a little bit of money, kind of like that $10 a month I did for myself. I do the same thing for the business, put a little bit aside so it adds up over time so that I can reinvest that money in my business when I need to. I can go over there and say, all right, my computer's on its last leg, it's struggling. Do I have enough money to invest? Do I have enough money to move forward? And this is how you change the state of your business with clarity, because when you see this, what happened for me is when I had that revenue and I could see the money coming in, at first I was realizing that my business was too lumpy. Meaning I would get paid on the 15th, I'd get paid on the 1st, or I'd get paid on the 31st, because a lot of people had like invoices I would send out. But what I really wanted in my business is I wanted a business where money was coming in every week. And then eventually I wanted money to be coming in every day. And the only way for me to see that, to see what was happening, to understand if I'm moving the needle as I'm making these changes, is to have a bank account that was just purely having revenue in it. So I could see if I was succeeding at my goal of creating steady revenue in my business and having services and products that are always bringing in money, as opposed to, the 30th of the month or the 29th of the month, the money's finally coming in and I'm like, whew, okay, we made it. That kind of feeling. What do you guys think? Anyone? I mean, you don't have to use my structure. It doesn't have to be 4 bank accounts. You may start with 3, you may start with 2. But what do you think about using this as a solution so you can get that transparency? The other thing I want to mention is what I had to do is I had to expand my services. I had to come up with processes for everything I did in my business. I had to make my business run better and manage these things that were happening, especially with my clients, is I had to put a system in place around the things that I do. Now, everyone knows I love tech. Everyone knows I love all that good stuff. But the tech is one piece of it. The other piece of it is just your mindset. Like, how organized do you want to be in your business? How much do you want to really be able to see your business, forecast your business? Because remember when I talked about doing the calendar, I started because I needed time off. But what I found is by me putting in holidays, days I wanted to take off, anything. I wanted to do something because I had a graduation coming up or anything like that in there. When I signed up clients for coaching, I had a calendar pre-populated with ideas, pre-populated with information. So if I had a client coming on or coaching client, I can say, all right, I'm not going to be available this week, but I can do this, or I'll be available to do that. If we're going to do a coaching session, it'd be better for us to start the week after instead of the other week, because my calendar was clear on what were my personal priorities. Then my business appointments were in there, and therefore I could talk to my clients with more confidence. I didn't back myself into a scenario where I'd hire someone and be like, oh goodness, I need to take off, or oh goodness, I have this other project I'm working on, or other priorities. Okay. The other thing is we put a process in place for everything. This took time. This took almost a year to do. So we just chipped away at it a little bit at a time. And what we ended up doing is saying invoicing has a process. Onboarding a client has a process. Signing contracts has a process. Every time we bring on a client, we have a process for kickoff meetings. We have a process for communication. I also sat down and wrote contracts for every single service. So everything that we do, we have a contract for. Everything we do, I have a kind of like brochure of all my services written out. Now, it doesn't mean I don't change them. It doesn't mean I don't get behind. And it doesn't mean I don't do anything new, because I am a person that they're like, oh, cool, can I do this? But at least I started with a boilerplate, and that really helped me. Now, the reason I'm walking you through all this, the reason I'm mentioning all of this to you, is because what this ultimately meant is that all the tools, all the tech, everything I had going on, I had to take a step back and start planning and automating. I had to start saying, what do I do every single week? What do I do every single day that are things that, can I automate it? Can I make it streamlined? Can I make it simpler to make it easier for me to run my business? So I schedule everything. Now, when I say I schedule everything, everything has a link. Yes, my clients who book me for consults, discovery calls, those links are fairly public. And for most of you, if you've ever been on any of my other training, I always do links for those things. But my team needs to meet with me. Anytime a team member wants to meet with me, I send them a Calendly link. Even though it sounds weird, I send my own team a Calendly link because I set up days that I'm available to meet my team. Because remember, when I set up my week, there's certain days that are for clients, there's certain days for my business, and then there's certain days that are for me. And therefore, the only way for me to stay true to it is to set up links so that people can schedule on those times, schedule for those things. The other thing I started to do with my team, even if you have a virtual assistant or someone who just helps you 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, because my team's not full time. My team is really freelancers, and my team is working anywhere from 5 to 10 hours a week. So it's not a crazy amount of time, but I do have a significant amount of people. I think we're up to like 13 people now. So I bring this up because at first I was just, go back and forth on Slack, or I just talk about it. I don't do that anymore. Everything, people grab a link. And that way I know that someone can get into my calendar when they need it. I know my team just needs the right link to send to a previous customer, someone who has a question about a course, someone who purchased a course and has an issue, someone's having a tech support issue. All of these things have links in my business now. And as we expand, all of these things now don't just come to me. So if I'm sick like I was before, I'm losing my voice, I'm this and that, and all these things, what happens now is my team is able to start taking over these processes. And for many of you who may grow and may hire just one person, 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, now this person can maybe take over that link in the future. Okay. And not just that, we had to sit down and create workflows. I'm really, really big on workflow. Now, when I say workflow, do you guys know what I mean when I say workflows? Are you kind of like, meh? Just let me know in the comments. The reason I bring this up is when you're running a business, most of the time it's not just a checkbox. It's not just I have these 10 tasks to get done. What often happens is a task will either move from you to another person, or it moves from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3. And what used to happen in my business is I kind of just did more like basic project management. Is it done? Has it been completed? But what we did, or we changed in our business, is we started to create workflows. So I organized my business. This is how my business is organized. I either have business workflows, and this is for my team. So each team member has their own workflow of what they're working on. I have a client workflow. So if somebody comes in and they book a consult, there's a process that they go through, and it's a standard workflow. Everyone who books a consult, everyone who books a discovery call goes through the same process. And I'll show you some examples of that. Social media. We have a standard workflow for social media. Some of that is because we have different team members touching the process, but also it's so something you're brainstorming and working on is separate from things that need to be approved or need to be published or need to be scheduled. We also have workflow for onboarding and interviewing team members. So say, for example, we're hiring somebody, or say you want to bring somebody on. And like I said, I don't mean forever. Someone's, going to be working full time. If you need support, you even need support for just 3 months. We set up a process that every single person we interview, every single person that applies goes into a workflow. Because what happened is we started to have people like apply for jobs, like 2 jobs or 3 jobs. And then we didn't keep track of who was who. And we were talking to people in just strange ways, like, oh, it's nice to meet you. And they're like, no, I applied for this, or I interviewed. So we got really complicated. So it ultimately said, let's just make, we call them tasks, but it's like a task for each person. So it's their name. And then we say what positions they applied for, where are they in that status, and how are they moving through the process? Because we have some people that we absolutely love. Sometimes we have like 2 people I want to work with, and I hire one person and it doesn't work out, then we just go to the second person. And that way our business can continue to flow and work. So this is what our workflows look like. When we hire someone, they do an application at the top. We schedule an interview. We know if they've been interviewed. If we send them an offer letter, I know if we considered not a good fit and we didn't interview them. Someone is not a good fit and we interviewed them. If we hired a person, if we emailed them and said there was no offer, and then ultimately when it's complete. Now, I know this may feel like, oh, this is a lot of work, because I know I said that earlier, right? It is, but when you do something more than once, over and over, and it's not documented, no one can help you. Your team can't help you. They can't come in and pick up a project because they don't know how it works. This is the same thing. This is our social media workflow. And it's big, it's long. Remember, I built this over 24 months. So when we first started, it had like 5 statuses in it. But the same thing, we do a podcast. If you're producing your own podcast, create a process around it, even if it's just you. Anything that you do on a consistent basis, if you're hosting classes, create a workflow around it. If you are going to do something like an annual event every single year, like we're going to be doing a conference next year, we're going to create a workflow around it. So it's documented, other people can help me with it, and I can make the process better and better. Also, this allows me to build a team, because what happens often in your business is you kind of feel alone. You feel like the only person. You feel like no one really understands what you're going through, even if you have a team, even if you have people supporting you. And this is what I struggled with. I struggled because, like I said, I had someone who was with me for 8 years, and I just love her dearly. And it was so hard when she left my team. Like when she told me she was leaving, literally, I was walking around talking to her. And I don't know, I ended up in my bathroom and literally I was so upset that I like sat on like the tub, like the edge of the tub. And after I got off the phone and I just sat there for a while. My husband came in and was like, "What are you doing? What's going on?" Because it was the middle of the day. And he's like, "Why are you sitting on the side of the tub? Is everything okay?" And I was just like, I said her name and I said, she's going to be leaving the team. And I was like, I can't believe I got to move forward without her. I can't believe I have to do this without her. And I always hope she knows how instrumental I believe she's been to my success and just how wonderful it's always been having her on the team. But what I realized is that loss, I'm always going to fail in my business. People are going to move on. People are going to leave. And great people are going to leave. And you want to have the opportunity to have a great person on your team. So don't get bitter when you lose somebody. Don't get bitter when you have an assistant that's amazing and they go and take a full-time job and you couldn't hire them for a full-time job, as an example, because I've had that happen too. Because that's a part of running your business. That's a part of these things. And you will feel lonely. You'll feel like you're just on this road trying to figure it out. But you just got to get back up and build that new team. You got to use those things like workflow to make it happen. And the more you document who you are, what you're doing, how your business works, the easier it will be to get someone onboarded. The easier it will be to overcome things like learning curves. And you won't feel like snatching a project back from somebody or saying, I'll just do it. And then the last slide I just want to bring up really quick is I want to talk about my ultimate solution. My ultimate solution through all of this change, through all of the stretching, through doing workflow, automating things, setting up process, was learning to accept things. To accept that sometimes I'm going to fail at some stuff, but I got to get back up. And when I say that, I don't mean it in a way like we all know we should get back up. But there's a difference between knowing you should do it and accepting that it's happened to you. Because at times you feel strong, at times you feel like you can do it, and at times you've been successful. But it only takes that one time that knocks you down. It only takes that one time that, you get like we got 2 new clients at the end of last year, and it was great, but it was so challenging. Hold on, I'm going to cough really quick. And it was so wonderful to expand the business. It was so wonderful to be like, oh my gosh, look at all this opportunity. But I didn't have the staff to do all the work. And it meant that I had to either postpone the contract. It meant I had to change things or I couldn't do everything I wanted. And it felt like failure to me, even though it wasn't technically that we had failed. It's just that it felt that way to me. And what I had to do is I had to say, it's okay that I feel like I failed, but I can get back up. It's okay that I'm disappointed that I can't start right away. I don't have the team members in place or I don't have the system in place. And then the last thing is I had to learn to get comfortable with apologizing. And what I mean by that is it's okay if you make a mistake. It's okay to admit it. I think sometimes as business owners, we're taught to be so brave to put on this face and this persona that we can handle it and fix it all. And I find that through this whole process, I can be strong and still mess up. That was about the curse there. Sorry, guys. I can be strong and I can make a mistake and I can feel confident when I have to express that mistake. Because I used to be like I would always admit it, but I always would feel bad and then I dwell on it. And now what I do is I find the solution. So if I didn't send someone a proposal like I was supposed to, I can say, hey, I'm sorry I messed up. I didn't get it over to you. If I get it to you in 2 days, will that be okay with you? If I didn't sign someone up for a program that I thought I was going to sign them up for, then I say, hey, this is a mistake I made. This is what I can do as a solution. And therefore, it allows our relationship to move forward, as opposed to me like sitting in this puddle of, oh, I'm sad and disappointed. And what I don't want you guys to do is sit in those puddles anymore. I don't want you to feel like the pain, the emotion, everything you're feeling, you just have to sit there. You can get back up. You can move forward. You can accept these imperfect kind of things that's happening in you, and you can kind of move forward. So, with that, we're going to wrap up today's session. Sorry, I went a little bit long. I just noticed the time. Thank you so much for just hanging out with me. As always, if you want to get connected, it's the first time we're connecting, just make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's where I kind of hang out, talk to people, chit chat with people. Also, it's a great way to just stay connected. So if you haven't connected with me yet, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm going to wrap up our session here on the live stream. So everyone on the live stream, I will see you later. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always post them in the comments.